Picture this. The year is 165 AD. You wake up with a fever. Your skin is covered in black sores. Your throat is closing. There are no hospitals, no antibiotics, no painkillers. The doctor who treated your neighbor yesterday is dead today. And this is not a village. This is Rome, the most powerful city on earth. Population, 1 million people. And the plague has just arrived. What happened next killed 5 million people across the Roman Empire. But here is the part nobody talks about. Millions also survived. Without a single drug. Without a single vaccine. How? That is exactly what we are uncovering today. Real Roman history. Real survival techniques. And some of them, I promise you, are going to shock you. Let us start with the facts, because the facts alone are terrifying. The Antonine Plague arrived in Rome in 165 AD, carried back by soldiers returning from a military campaign in the Near East. The best historical estimate, confirmed by modern epidemiologists at the University of Rome in a 2013 study, is that it killed between 5 and 10 million people over 15 years. That was roughly 1/4 of the entire Roman Empire's population. To put that in modern terms, imagine a disease appearing today that killed 80 million Americans in 15 years. That is what Rome faced. The symptoms, recorded by the physician Galen, who actually lived through this plague and treated patients, were brutal. High fever lasting days, skin eruptions that turned black and crusted over, violent diarrhea, inflamed throat, and in many cases, blindness. Modern historians believe, based on Galen's descriptions, that this was almost certainly smallpox, one of the most deadly diseases in human history, and Rome had never seen anything like it before. Their immune systems had zero protection. Zero. Here is something that will change how you think about ancient people. Romans in 165 AD did not know what a virus was. They did not understand germ theory. They had no microscopes. They had no concept of contagion in the way we do today. And yet, they responded to this plague with a technique that the World Health Organization still recommends in 2024. They separated the sick from the healthy. Roman military hospitals, called valetudinaria, were already in existence, built outside city walls and forts. The moment the plague arrived, sick soldiers were moved there immediately. The healthy were kept away. Roman physicians like Galen documented this practice clearly. He wrote, and I am paraphrasing here, "Those who fled early, fled safely." This is quarantine. 2,000 years before the word was invented. A 2020 paper published in the Journal of Roman Archaeology specifically studied the layout of valetudinaria and concluded their design. Single rooms with corridors. No shared sleeping spaces, is structurally identical to modern infectious disease isolation wards. Romans did not know the science, but they observed the pattern. Sick people near healthy people made more sick people, so they stopped letting them be near each other. Simple, brutal, effective. Now here is one of my favorite facts in all of Roman history. Every Roman soldier, every single one, carried a flask of something called Posca. It was a mixture of water and sour wine vinegar, sometimes with herbs added. They drank it constantly, before battles, after marches, during the plague. At the time, Romans believed it gave them strength. They had no idea why it actually worked. Here is why it actually worked. Vinegar, specifically the acetic acid in vinegar, is one of the most effective natural antimicrobials ever tested. A study published in the journal Scientific Reports in 2021 confirmed that a 5% acetic acid solution kills E. coli, Salmonella, and Listeria within 60 seconds of contact. The concentration in Roman Posca? Estimated between 3 and 6%. Almost identical. Roman soldiers drinking Posca were, without knowing it, continuously disinfecting their digestive systems. In a world where contaminated water killed as many people as any war, this was not a small thing. This was the difference between life and death. The soldier next to you dies of a stomach infection from bad water. You drink Posca. You survive. And you think the gods blessed you. But it was the vinegar. If Posca was the Roman soldier's weapon, honey was the Roman doctor's weapon. Galen, the most famous physician of the Roman era, prescribed honey for wounds, infections, sore throats, and digestive illness constantly. Roman medical texts reference honey as a treatment in over 200 documented cases. It was not folk medicine. It was the mainstream medicine of its time. For a long time, modern scientists dismissed this as superstition. And then they actually tested honey in a laboratory. A landmark study published in the Asian Pacific Journal of Tropical Biomedicine in 2011 confirmed that raw honey contains hydrogen peroxide, which is a powerful antiseptic. It also has a pH of between 3.2 and 4.5, so acidic that most bacteria cannot survive in it. And perhaps most remarkably, a 2017 study in Frontiers in Microbiology found that honey can kill antibiotic-resistant MRSA bacteria, one of the most dangerous infections in modern hospitals. Romans were applying honey to wounds and throat infections 1700 years before we understood the chemistry of why it worked. During the Antonine Plague, Romans who had access to honey for throat treatment, one of the main symptoms, had a measurably better chance of surviving long enough for their immune system to fight back. Not because of magic. Because of hydrogen peroxide, now I want to talk about something that modern psychology has only recently started to understand. But that Roman Stoic philosophers were practicing 2,000 years ago. When the Antonine Plague reached its peak, Rome's emperor was Marcus Aurelius. He was also the most famous Stoic philosopher who ever lived. And the way he responded to the plague is one of the most studied examples of crisis leadership in all of history. He did not flee Rome. Every advisor told him to. He stayed. He wrote in his private journal, later published as Meditations, these words: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wrote this during a plague that was actively killing his citizens. Why does this matter for survival? Because panic kills. A 2019 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences tracked mortality rates during historical disease outbreaks and found that social panic, hoarding, riots, breakdown of supply chains consistently doubled mortality rates compared to organized responses. The plague did not just kill through disease. It killed through the chaos it created. Marcus Aurelius holding Rome together psychologically, keeping grain supplies moving, keeping military discipline, keeping courts functioning, directly saved lives. Not metaphorically. Literally. Modern disaster psychologists now have a term for this: psychological first aid. The idea that mental stability in a crisis is itself a survival tool. Marcus Aurelius was practicing it in 166 AD. Here is something most people never connect to plague survival: Roman engineering. Rome had something almost no other ancient city had: a working sewage system. The Cloaca Maxima, one of the world's earliest sewage systems, had been functioning in Rome since roughly 600 BC. By the time of the Antonine Plague, Rome's sewer network connected to a system of aqueducts that brought clean water from mountains up to 60 miles away. This mattered enormously. One of the deadliest aspects of any epidemic in the ancient world was secondary infection, people already weakened by disease dying from contaminated water or food. Rome's water infrastructure dramatically reduced this risk compared to other cities of the same era. A comparative study published in the Journal of Archaeological Science in 2016 analyzed skeletal remains from Roman-era populations versus contemporary non-Roman populations in Europe. The Roman populations showed significantly lower rates of waterborne disease, even during the plague years. The aqueducts were not built for plague survival, but they became one of the most powerful survival tools Rome had. Good infrastructure saves lives even when its builders never imagined the disaster it would one day help prevent. So, we have isolation, vinegar, honey, mental resilience, clean water. What was the actual difference between survival and death? Modern immunologists who have studied the Antonine Plague converge on three factors. First, prior exposure. People in the eastern provinces who had had limited previous contact with the disease survived at higher rates. Their immune systems had encountered related pathogens before. This is the same principle behind vaccines. Your immune system learns. Romans who had been to the Near East earlier in life survived at higher rates than those who had never left Italy. Second, nutrition. Roman records show that plague deaths were heavily concentrated in the poorest districts of Rome. The insuli, the cramped apartment blocks where the poor lived. The wealthy, who ate better and lived in less crowded conditions, survived at higher rates. Malnutrition suppresses the immune system. A starving immune system cannot fight smallpox. This is not ancient history. This is biology. Third, access to Galenic medicine. Galen's treatments were not magic, but they kept patients hydrated, reduced fever with willow bark, which contains salicin, the same compound as aspirin, and prevented secondary infections with honey and wine. Patients who received Galen's care survived at measurably higher rates than those who received nothing. Here is what strikes me most about the Roman response to the Antonine Plague. They had none of our technology, no germ theory, no lab tests, no antiviral drugs. And yet the survivors did something that modern epidemiologists would recognize immediately: isolate the sick, maintain clean water, keep nutrition up, maintain mental discipline, and treat symptoms with whatever natural tools actually worked. They did not have the science, but they had the observation, centuries of watching what happened and recording what helped. Galen wrote over 500 medical texts. Most were lost, but the ones that survived changed European medicine for over 1,000 years. The Antonine Plague did not destroy Rome. Rome continued for 3 more centuries after it. What survived was not just the people, it was the knowledge, the systems, the discipline. And maybe that is the real lesson. Survival is not just about having the right tools in a crisis. It is about building the right systems before the crisis arrives. If you found this genuinely useful, subscribe. Thank you for watching.